Welcome to The Shift, a place where real people have real discussions in search of the truths inside and outside the modern day church. You can find us at theshiftpodcast.info or connect with us on your favorite social media platform.
Hello.
Hey guys.
What's up?
So you're gonna want to go to YouTube today because we have somebody else on here. And plus, we took a shower today, so you should so you should want to see our faces and not just listen to us. Um, anyways, we had a plan to do some other recordings, which we are still going to do that and have some other topics that Abby and I really wanted to discuss. But by this point that you're getting this podcast, you got to know like what's going on over in the Middle East. And I was just telling Abby, hey, can we push pause for a minute and do a quick little just talk back and forth about some stuff and nuances that are going on?
It won't be a quick little.
It probably won't be a quick little, but hopefully maybe not too much, because I've been talking with people and they just don't understand anything, and we're so inundated with social media and like if you don't have like accurate places where you even just find news, like it's hard to even know. Like there's people we get some news from somebody that lives over there and has a pulse on it, and they were like, I thought it was showing like Lebanese missiles coming into the Golan, and he's like, that was from 2 years ago. People just started putting stuff up there, making it seem like that it was new, but it wasn't. And so I was talking to one of the girls that we do like weekly check-ins, and she was like, I don't understand. And she's young in her 20s, and I don't like what is happening and why is it important. And so like we're going to try to do a little bit. I mean, here's number one, like Abby said right before you push record, like we're not scholars. We're not trying to school you. We're trying to have conversation because this is actually normal everyday like life and people. Not everybody wants to be scholar, but we should know what's happening, because even biblically speaking, like these like this area is in the Bible, and from front to back there is so much activity and even prophetic stuff that speaks to the land. And so I think we're going to have some conversation historically about, that's why James, you're on, if y'all don't know, Abby's husband,
artist.
Yeah, who does all of our art for us, which is so rad. But and even like talk, some historical stuff, and we can talk a little bit biblically. But in the end, like these are people too, and we have to recognize that. And what a shame for us to begin to demonize as well in the midst of all this. And I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people, especially where we're at. I mean, you're in Florida, it's really conservative, maybe not Bible belty. I'm in Texas and it is Bible belt. Like you talk about that kind of stuff, and it gets really touchy because people are very zealous about their love for Israel, which we should be, but it's like, what is that? I don't know if we're going to get into all those things, but at least some basic stuff so and you're aware. And then when you hear things and you can go look at stuff, you have a little bit of like education of, okay, I can start making some choices and grow on my own from there. So
Right. Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Good job, Megan.
I was like, and here is like, I even pulled up, most people don't even know like where things are. Like
James was like, I've been here, I've been here, I've been
yes.
there, I've been there, I've been there, I've been there. Yeah.
And so like I even had to for a while go back and do that. I mean, I was in Germany, dude, for so long. I was like thinking that Austria and stuff, it's down here. Like I'm like, did I skip out on all of my geography classes? It is so, I didn't know how important it was. So, but anyways, why don't maybe James give us some like historical? Okay.
Yeah. James, let me say this first before he does that. So James is retired from the military. He's traveled. He's been in a lot of these places, and so the knowledge that he's bringing is probably boots on the ground stuff. Truly, like literally boots on the ground for a lot of these places. He also loves to travel and loves history just as a hobby even. So he's really incredible with some of his information and just the things that he's really into. He's great with history and dates and that kind of stuff. So, there may be some things that we misspeak. We may not be completely accurate. These are just straight off the cuff from memory, right? And from experience. We also have people that we love within our family that are from all over the world. And so, he'll probably get into that a little bit here and there. So just know that we're coming at it from a very organic standpoint. He's gonna give us a little history to start us off. So go, babe, go.
Yeah. So
Poor guy.
yeah, you guys have been doing the podcast thing for how long now?
I don't
3 years.
know.
3 years. Okay. And this is the first time I've been invited onto one of the podcasts, and you didn't give me any prep time.
Nope, that's not how we roll.
So
We just wing it.
okay. So yeah, I don't want to spread any misconceptions or do kind of like what the media does and just spreads misinformation around. And so, yeah, I'm not a scholar and all that. I just have been and lived in that part of the world for many, many years. The first time I was in Israel was 1998, and I was probably a lance corporal at the time in the Marine Corps, and we trained with the IDF out in the Nev Desert, which is the very southern desert part of Israel, almost right there on the Egyptian-Israeli border area. And we did a good, I think it was two solid weeks. Yeah.
Megan's got her flannel graph out.
Yeah.
Magic flannel graph.
So really, really tough guys, and I mean,
And gals.
and I've trained with numerous foreign militaries, and I would have to say that the IDF hands down.
Which is the IDF is tell us
The Israeli Defense Force.
Okay.
And there was just the one thing I always remember about them is we kind of had what was called like a warrior's night last night in the desert, lots of food to eat, and kind of just had a warrior's night. And they sing their national anthem and we sang ours, and holy crap, I mean, the amount of patriotism kind of put us to shame, because these people, like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But before we started recording, we were kind of talking about the whole relationship with Ishmael and Isaac. And I'm not here to like start a debate or anything, but it is debatable. A lot of people here in the Western Church claim that Ishmael is
The father
of the Arab/Muslim race, and
Mm-hmm.
that's still kind of debatable, because that area of the world has always been just a huge melting pot. And we were also talking before the recording, I had mentioned that my brother-in-law, who is from Israel,
We love you, buddy. If you ever come across this.
That area of the world became known as Palestine, because that's the name that the British gave that area, because they believed at the time that the Palestinians were direct descendants of the Philistines.
Mm-hmm. So our brother-in-law is Palestinian, right, by birth. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So when you go and you look at the word Palestine in Hebrew, it means grief-stricken dust rollers, land of borrowed land. So that, I mean,
It's a lot.
yeah, that's a lot.
That's a heavy title.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heavy title. And it says that the word Palestine comes from Philistine.
Yeah.
So here we go tying that in there. Well,
my mind starts like racing.
I know.
in another way.
I'm just in that because there's proving my point I made before we got on here, but that's okay. You guys weren't here for that. We'll hopefully roll into that. All right, go ahead.
Well, I was hoping one of you would take over from
Take
there.
over. Oh, okay. All right. So we don't want to spread misinformation like James was saying. We don't know. I know it's a very popular opinion that the origins of this people comes from that particular incident. If you don't know what we're talking about, for some of you that need to read your Bible, we're talking about when what was her name? I can't remember her name. Anyway, there was one child born to a servant, and it was Abraham and Sarah, right? Yeah, it was. I can't remember her name. Anyway, sorry, I need to read my Bible. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so she had the oldest son, and she was sent out into the wilderness, but the Lord provided for her and brought her back in. Her son was not the promised son that God had given.
Hagar.
Hagar. I was like, I was thinking Haman, but I know that's not right. It's a dude.
From Egypt.
Yes. So she was kicked out and shunned into the wilderness. And it was, her life was spared, her son's life was spared. And so traditionally what a lot of people think is that the Arab people are spawned basically from that, I think what was it? I was looking up. The Islamic tradition says that the 12 tribes of Ishmael are basically the tribes that the Islamic religion comes from. Okay. We also know that in Jewish tradition, the 12 tribes of Israel were descended from Abraham and his wife Sarah's son Isaac. So here, this is tradition. It's traditionally, right? It's not like we have this DNA to prove it, or like it wasn't stated specifically in the Bible, like flat out in black and white or red or any of those other colors. But that is traditionally what is thought. Okay. Yeah. And so there has been like this tumult. But I think one thing James brought up when we were talking about it before this, that was really cool. If you are reading the story in Nehemiah of the wall being rebuilt, he was saying something about the people that were there that were helping with the building.
Yeah. It's been a while since I read it, of course, but it mentioned that it was so-and-so, so-and-so, and the Arab. So, now in the translation from, the original text to Latin, to English, I don't know how that comes into play, but at least in our English Bibles, it gives a hint that there were several different lineages of people there. There were Israelis, there were and Arabs.
Yeah, it
that
says,
helped rebuild the wall.
It says, so we rebuilt the wall till all of it had reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. So maybe they didn't help rebuild it.
They didn't, or did
not.
Did not.
They were trying to thwart it.
They were trying to thwart it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a different translation than what we read before.
Yeah, so I think my point is that even back, and this is Ezekiel,
No, this is
or
Nehemiah.
Nehemiah. So even back then, there was a term for Arab.
Right. So they were around during that time. Now, one thing I think that's kind of interesting in reading this is it's Jerusalem's walls that they're attacking. Why were they building walls? I mean, was it people? They built it half the size. I don't know. I've been in this giant thing in my mind. I've been in this giant thing. James and I were talking about the Great Wall of China the other day, and we're like, we don't know who constructed that guy.
Yeah.
There are of it that are massive, and what were they trying to keep out? Like, what's going on? What's the reason for walls being so high? And it's interesting that it's mentioned that the Ammonites, and some of these people that were against the building of the wall, they come from questionable bloodlines.
Mm-hmm.
And the questionable bloodline, really, I have been on this journey with this Nephilim thing for a while now. And I think that the bloodline is very important when we're looking at this story, when we're looking at any of this stuff that's going on over there. I may have to eat crow. I may have to repent. You guys know how that goes. I'm fine with it. I'll do it. I talk about stuff that's just churning in my mind on here. And I think that when we are looking at Israel, for me, there were covenants that God made, and I think it's the Abrahamic covenant. Again, guys, we're not professionals here. We're just talking about stuff that we chat about. But the Abrahamic covenant, it's always mentioned that land was promised to them in this covenant. And so what we fail to hear, though, is that God says, I'll make covenant with you until, or, as long as. There's always some sort of we need to walk in that. The Lord this is not a one-way thing, right? It's not a one-way promise that God has given.
A covenant with a people, not a land, but there is a land that is very important. So,
Yes,
like,
the land
broke his covenant with the people,
right?
But
the
land is a different. Well, obviously, the land's a different issue because you can see how it swapped hands for so long.
How many times did he allow it to be handed off and passed around?
Yeah.
So
it's like, I love you. I'm still in covenant with you, but this land thing is not.
I would love for you to be able to stay in this place you call home that I would give you.
That's super fertile.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many like crazy things over there, but like, and so that, like, so here, let's move that into right now, because like, I mean, we could like deep dive into so many like threads, but like, why is it important now? I think even especially for young people, I was saying something like, okay, let's just take all the things out of it. Number one, okay, we're not trying to justify, like, what happened was horrible and wrong. It wasn't war. It was like terrorist, like it was horrible human. This is a human issue. And like, I'm so grieved watching the things go. But you know what? These things have been going on forever, but it was just so like social media, like I mean, they were videoing it live, while they were doing all these things. And so it was like right there in your face and very shocking on such a high level. So just like I mean, I'm so grieved.
Yes. It's not what we're saying is not to downplay. What I'm saying is not to downplay that.
Oh yeah, no, that's not.
Or even to point a finger and say they're better than they are, because back in the 60s when Israel retook that land, it wasn't like just shoo Palestinian people go to the West Bank. I mean, it was pretty brutal, and they were uprooting families that had lived on their farms for hundreds of years and just kicking them off of their land and shoving them into the Gaza Strip and to the West Bank. And, now you've got, all of you people now have to go and live in this 25-mile strip of land, and that's it. And sorry, your family lived on this property, this land for 200, 300, 500 years and farmed it generation after generation. Sorry, you got to go.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a peaceful removal. It was
grab your crap and go.
It was very violent.
Yeah.
And I mean, so the Israelis didn't go in there and just, peace be with you, get off the land. It was some pretty brutal stuff that happened.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
So
And we don't know. God has given some crazy orders in the Bible.
Yeah.
But most of the time it was to eradicate a bloodline. Right? I mean, that's
Always it was about that.
Yeah.
A
So
compromised bloodline.
So for me, I guess like what I was starting to say is, for me personally, I almost at this point, right? I may learn something new, change my mind, someone, whatever. But I almost feel like God made this covenant, right? He made this covenant for them. He gave them land. But really the covenant was, like Meagan said, was with the people. It's within this bloodline, within this culture, right? A pure race of people, whatever, bloodline, however you want to look at that. That did not carry DNA from a previous fall, or didn't come from that. And he made a promise with them, and he wanted to,
and not just a different people group, it would be like
species.
different species. We're not talking like, you a person
Yeah.
married a black person, or because back in the day that was taboo. No, this was
Yeah.
like way different.
Nobody cares about your skin tone. Nobody cares about.
No.
We're talking about, like, are you human, or are you something that God did not create? Yeah. Are you a hybrid? Are you AI?
Oh
No.
my God.
So, I mean, the way that I look at Israel is the same way I've discussed many times on here. The way that we should look at the Garden of Eden. It's a birthplace. It is a place where God met with his people. It is, there's should be an altar built to the Lord there. That should be a fountain that flows out of it, a tree that, that, like, this is the idea of Jerusalem, the idea of Israel.
Which it is, and I think that's why people want it, right?
Right. Agreed. And they also want to make God a liar. I think it's as simple as that. I think the enemy's agenda is to make God look like he can't defend them, doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not ruling and reigning on the throne.
Yeah.
And I know that Israeli people are very touchy about the land, but to me, when we get, okay, so the Jewish tradition, if we're talking traditional Jewish tradition, they miss the Messiah, right? As far as we believe, they have missed Jesus. They didn't catch that. And when we don't flow with the Holy Spirit, and we don't catch what the Lord is moving and stepping into, then we get off course. And I think that this fight over this land is something that's got people hung up a lot of the time. Now, none of this violence should occur. None of this stuff should be a thing. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. It's all wicked and evil. But to me, I think I tend to look at Jerusalem like the garden. It was supposed to be expanded and stretched. The goodness of that land would have been expanded and stretched. What would have happened if the Jewish people would have, in large, everyone accepted Christ as the Messiah? What do we think would have happened then?
Yeah.
The Lord promised he would spread Abraham's seed across the earth, right? And so the land that's great. All right. We expand and change territories all the time. I don't know. I tend to look at it a little bit differently. I think that we get hung up on the land, and, Israel needs to be in their land and they need to this. Well, I think it's kind of like, the mouth of a river. It should start in one place and then pour out, into others. And I may be wrong about that, but at least right now.
Yeah, not but. I don't want to say but's not the right. Okay. And so here now, with all that being said, whether we like it or not, that land piece plays a role in the time clock of things that the Lord has, said. And so that is why it's significant. And it even, like, biblically speaking, there will be like a migration of people. Like, there's going to be all kinds of stuff that's happening, and even with countries, and it talks specifically about certain countries in the Bible, that things that are going to happen. And so that's why when stuff like this happens, and why, like, believers, we need to be aware, only because it's like, oh, wait, here, okay, I need to pay attention. I need to know what's happening over there. I need to know what's going on in these lands, because they're indicators of certain things.
Yes.
And the Lord he tells us things so that we pay attention, because there's things that are happening, and it's not to be, people always are like, the revelation is, like the apocalypse. Actually, the revelation of Jesus. Like, this is, it's horrible, but when it's all said and done, it's about the revelation of Jesus and his fullness. And so, like, that's why we look. And that is why we have to pay attention and know, like, we don't have to be obsessed, and we can't forget that there's people. It is so easy for us to be away from things and be so polarized, and not like, that's what I was thinking, like, when all this was happening. Like, I was like, Jesus, like, okay, you love humanity, whether we like it or not. Like, you love humanity, and this is happening, and you're grieved on both sides, and it's such a mess. And we, of all people, should know that, especially in these days, things that we once thought were one way are not. And we don't even really know. We can only just, hypothesize certain things, but we have to stick to, like, our fundamental kingdom, like the way Jesus navigated things. And the Jewish people, like, they were so indignant about so many things, and Jesus came and was like, women, be blessed to do this, Samaritans, be blessed to do this. And 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 I know the Bible says, he who stands with Israel will be looked on favorably, but you're right. But we shouldn't be demonizing any, like, humanity thing. Like, this is wrong, but the Bible said this is going to happen. And
Yeah.
these are going to be signs and labor pains of what is coming. And this is why we need to know what's happening. It's not so we can start being angry and political and, like, all this stuff. It is to be aware and to look up and pay attention. And I mean, we could go into other things that are happening, like, biblically speaking. Like, I tell people, I've talked to certain people about, like, Turkey, and biblically what that plays into it. No one's paying attention to anything about that. And actually, in the end, this is sort of gonna come up to the surface, and there's so many nuances. But we're so focused on this one thing, we're missing these
We're definitely
other things
walking
that
in
are
the
happening.
wars and rumors of wars right now.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, is this go time? I don't know. But does that matter? Yes and no.
Well, we
It's-
practice.
we should
It's
be
been
looking
going
at
on
the-
forever, and we can't. Even Paul was like, "You better get ready."
Yeah.
He was one of the, greatest apostles. Like, I mean, we've gleaned so much from him. He was always like, "Hey, any minute, pay
Mhm.
attention. This is serious." Like, what? So if he's doing it, then, well, then we should be the same one saying, "Hey guys, whether it is a false alarm or not, hey guys, pay attention." Because what if it is?
Yeah. And
You
your
know,
response is what matters when someone pulls the fire alarm.
yeah.
Is it true or is it not? It doesn't matter if God is prepping us for a time, or if the enemy is trying to psych us out and think, oh, they thought this was the time, and now next time they're not going to believe it so much. It's like the boy that cried wolf.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it doesn't matter. We need to just be prepared and live righteous. Well, I said righteously, but not bashing people over the head.
So connected
Yeah.
to the one that, like, has created all the things, and the only one who knows the time. It's a woman, a pregnant woman waiting to give birth. Like, what, every single time, we know as women who have given birth, I don't take it, I never took it lightly. I was like, oh, is this it? I mean,
Yeah.
even when it was like 7 months, I was 7 months pregnant. I had 2 more months. Like, you take it seriously. And up until the very last minute, you never were like, well, I'm not pregnant. I guess I'm not pregnant,
Braxton Hicks feels just as real as
just
the
as
other.
real as the other. And so, like, what do? We posture ourselves. We get ready. We get the bag ready. And so that this is, whether or not it's not, like, this is a great indicator, get the bag ready and
Get in the car.
get it. Yeah, have gas in the car,
The car seat.
get the plan together, like
That
the
way.
earth's laboring right now, and we should pay attention, and we should do what the Bible says and say, come Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
Come.
And just have a space prepared. You got something?
Yeah, I think everything that happens on this earth happens for a reason. And so whether it's this current attack in Israel or the one from 3 years ago or the one before 5 years before that, I think each one of them is significant. We excuse me. We were talking before the podcast about how Hamas is using guerrilla tactics. And so terrorists use guerrilla tactics because they know that they can't take on that adjacent military head on. So they use these little guerrilla tactics. And so in the same way, the devil knows that he can't take God head on. He can't do a whole frontal assault on God and win. He knows he's going to get burned. So he's going to create little fires over here and little fires over here to keep our eyes focused on what's happening on the fence line versus what's being planned, in secret underground, and so it's basic guerrilla tactics 101. Keep probing the lines, start little skirmishes here and there, fire a couple shots, run away, but keep the focus over here while the major planning is happening over here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, we could implement that into our own lives and our own, like, this has to go from our micro lives into like the macro that is happening right before us, which is micro to people that are over there.
Yes. Our whole worldview has to shift and change completely.
Yeah.
And we have to just build off of love. That's what's missing essentially over there is love, between the two people. And if it started with the one split between brothers, if that started there, it started from something that was not love. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't obedience. We want to push on the obedience, but there was no love either.
Yeah.
That came from that.
Obedience is not an issue when you're in love. Like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, between both of y'all, it's like, not that it's not even, obedience is such like a cold word when you insert it into love. Like, we want to so much be obedience, but we would not even be having to talk so much about obedience if we would get the love thing right.
If I love you, I want to spend time with you, and I want to do things that are beneficial to you and to us, and
not hurt you and be for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to do that thing. Obedience isn't even in question at that point, because it's the loyalty that's unspoken. It doesn't even need said, right?
Yeah. So like, if Derek were to be like, hey, it's not like, obey me, woman. It's like, hey, would you, I love you. I would want to do, I love you. I would do that.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we have focused on a lot of things, just the world in general, people in general. If we cut back, like you were saying about the land, it's very important. It's like if you take a tree, this is what I was seeing earlier, you take a tree and you cut it completely back, but you leave the root system, it's still going to grow. It's still there. Yeah. Right. And I think that's the importance of the land of Israel, but it's intended to spread like ground cover.
Yeah.
Like, right. The concept of being a child of God, being in that covenant, being, it was intended to spread.
Yeah.
Like fire. And it's been clipped at, but the ends of it, like James was saying with the guerrilla tactics, they've been clipping at the ends of it. You have Hitler's invasion and all these different places. it was still an attack on the bloodline. He was still trying to thin those numbers. And it was the people they were trying to take out, not the land. I mean, the land was kind of like a focal point. It always has been. And I'm the dirt person. Like, I love dirt. I love territories. I love
But if
all
you
the
occupy land, you have more space to have children and build your people group. I mean, if you have a tiny amount of land and everybody keeps having kids, there's no room. Like, it just,
they were rooted. That people group is rooted there because God promised something there. And that's huge. I think it's really sad because God's intention was for everything to spread a little wider, a little more like wildfire. We need to pay attention to those traditions and know kind of those things because they were important to Jesus, right? Yeah. Not necessarily the tradition itself, but I'm sure Jesus celebrated all the feasts, right? He was Jewish. He wasn't Christian. So he celebrated all these things, knowing he was the fulfillment of them and knowing that it was going to shift and he wouldn't be, he would be lost in the sauce to many.
yeah.
Right? And I was telling Meagan and James, I've told this story before, the saddest thing to me, when I was studying major world religions in college, I went to a temple and I had a rabbi tell me, the kid in my class, he posed the question, what's the difference between our religion and yours? What's the biggest difference? And the guy told him, in your telling of the story, the Pharisees and Sadducees were the bad guys, and in ours they were the heroes, which is awful. But at the same time, they were kind of both, right? But the traditional Jewish religion doesn't understand that they were both, just like the Christians might not understand completely that they're both. But my romanticized version of Judaism kind of died a little bit that day.
Oh, yeah.
I believe in the Jewish people, and I believe in the same God that they serve. I just think we take it a little further, right? We take it a little further. We did not miss the one who came.
No. And we, that's why I was at the beginning, I was like, there's this people group that have no idea, who don't care. And then there's these ones. And so we think we know them, we see them, we're around like Christians who are celebrating all the thing, who are doing all the Jewish traditions, all that stuff. And so, but there is a group in the middle who we just want to we honor what that was and what that is. But we don't want to be ignorant,
right?
But we are kingdom people.
Yeah.
And we're going to fix our eyes of knowing that this is a time clock, but I'm not going to get wrapped up in something that is not, I mean, Paul was the perfect example. He did all the things and he was slowly unwinding that. And so there has been this resurgence of the Jewish culture, and I'm not demonizing it, but there are people that are not in that need to know, and we can still value things and want to pay attention to it, but I don't have to go do that kind of stuff. And I'm going to keep my eyes looked up on Jesus and the kingdom, because it's come and it's coming.
Yes. It's important to watch the clock, to look for the times and seasons. It's important to recognize the beauty and, what the traditions, celebrate, what they mark, what they stand for. Does God move? Is it possible God moves during certain times and, festivals and feasts and different things? I just believe God moves all the time. I don't know how much I hear people say, oh, it's the time for this and it's the time for that. And I'm going, that's beautiful. And there probably is some cosmic equation there, but I'm not a math person. And I just choose to believe that God, he moves all the time. And I don't have to wait for a feast to walk in that abundance or blessing with him. But is it great for us to remember? Absolutely. We have to remember those traditional things, and the word of mouth teaching are what are so important for those of us who are transitionaries, who are moving in this next new thing, because once we're gone, our children have to carry it.
Yeah.
Eventually we're going to end up probably like the book of Eli, where you better have the Bible, like somebody better have the Bible memorized in order to continue to speak this thing on the earth again, because we have to keep the word of mouth traditions. That's one of my
That's
favorite
what has to be. He wrote it on our hearts, which I don't think we really have even tapped into that, because it's not been a necessity.
Yeah.
But what happens when there's nothing left and we are like, we don't have it, but we do have it, but we've never had to access it.
Yeah. That's like my favorite scene, I think, in what is it, the Nativity story, when Mary goes in and she tries to sell the cheese to the teacher lady who's in there, and she walks in and all you hear is, and after that, a still small voice, right? And that, to me, like I hear that every time when I'm like, okay, the Lord wants us to remember, wants us to teach our children and the next generations these things. We have to do that, because if we don't, there comes a time where we can lose that on the earth greatly. Okay. And then I think that's sort of one of the dangers of Israel right now, because so much of that truth has been lost from the land. It's been taken over. It's been there's been we were talking about all the bloodshed. James was talking about the bloodshed of so many different people groups on that land. And the Lord was like, strange offering, strange fire.
Yeah.
Right. The whole time is strange fire. There's blood covenants from all kinds of things.
Israelite blood, there's Arab blood, there's Turkish blood, there's just French blood, English blood, like the places had so
there's American blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a little like Babel right there. I mean, there had to be some bloodshed. There was bloodshed there, and none of it was sacrifice. I don't think that God would want made. The only sacrifice I think he really wanted made after everything was Jesus. I mean,
yeah,
he didn't want for people to muddy the bloodlines and certain things. And
but once Jesus's blood came, though,
it canceled everything.
Yeah, it shut the mouth of it.
Yeah, if we let it, because here's the thing, we have to let it, because all these things that he's talking about, the wars and the bloodshed post that,
but it's unnecessary.
Right, unnecessary, but it is a blood sacrifice on that land that it was all canceled.
Yeah.
It's just like the flood, everything canceled, then the blood, right, canceled. And
but even in the Old Testament,
blood in the land, I'm like,
when the Israelites came out of their 40 years of wandering and they went into the land of Canaan, what was the first thing they did? They killed everybody. They shed blood. I mean, on God's command. And then there was a systematic, go after this tribe now this tribe, and eradicate every, I mean, God even told, King, before David, Saul, like slaughter everything, even
the animals,
yeah. Because here we go.
Here we go.
It was there were giants in the land, right? There were giant things. There was this bad bloodline.
I don't even know which direction we're going right now. Where are we going?
We need to land the plane.
Just ride. So like, I mean, that's where we have to question the chimerics and some of these other things I know we're going to end up getting into, the giants, the chimerics, the bloodlines of people and things. And that's a deal. That's a whole thing. The Lord was like, slaughter it. He was trying to purify that thing. And what if he just had Jerusalem and he said, I'm going to promise you this land, just stay in this land, right? Just stay here, follow what I'm saying. And it's like a corral, like don't let anything out so that your bloodline stays pure. And I'm going to annihilate every other enemy. And they could do it. What if that, I mean, who knows? That could be a thing.
Well, and it was even to the point, where God was just like, march your army over here and have them drink out of the river. And those guys that drink like dogs, like
get them out of here.
Send them back home.
Yeah.
And if I was the king or the general, or I'd be like, what?
He
Like
probably was.
we're going up against a force that is a lot bigger than ours, and now you want me to send some of these guys home?
Do you want me to break pots? Like what? Seriously, you want me to hide in the woods and break pots? What
Yeah.
are we doing
Or
here?
you want me to send singers out instead of warriors?
Yeah, and
Oh
so
my gosh, I can see Megan.
like Abby, you were
Yeah.
you were talking about the promise, the promise of the promised land.
Mhm.
But with that promise came everything else. I mean, miracles and great men from the Bible that we read about all the time. And then, of course, if you're a Jew, that land is important to you because that was land that God gave you coming out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And for Christians, it's that land's important to us because that's where Jesus walked.
That was the
That's where
blood of
Jesus was
Christ.
crucified. And depending on what Bible scholar you talk to, they will say that will also be the geologic or the geographical
Yeah,
is that a word?
geographical.
Geographical location of where Armageddon is going to take place.
Yeah.
So there's all of
We're the New
these
Jerusalem.
like
Newsflash,
attachments.
we're the New Jerusalem.
And so, like I was saying before we hit the record button,
Would it be in America? What?
that
DC. It's in DC. Just so you guys know.
well,
It's under Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago.
but I think it was either when we were all sleeping last night, they had like 10,000 Muslims went into Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, and they're basically chanting that we will build the third temple. And it's just like, so all of these, all these westernized pastors and evangelists and all, they're taking that and they're going nuts with it right now. And so it's getting a little crazy.
It is.
I mean, the Jews have been dealing with Hamas for decades, and before that it was Hezbollah, and Al Qaeda had been in there for a little while. Everyone has wanted to destroy Israel because they see the Israeli people as an extension of the British from when Israel was a British Commonwealth or Palestine was a British Commonwealth, that they're colonizers, that the land doesn't belong to them anymore. They came in and they took it by force. And so,
well, that's every single place. That's why I was seeing is they were like, well, this is decolonization. This is what this looks like. And I was like, okay. So you wrote a news article about, so what happens if that happens in your state? Someone comes in and starts like dragging children out, like shooting them, raping people, killing them, dragging them all around. Then you're going to be like, well, I guess this is what decolonization looks like. No.
yeah,
It shouldn't be.
No.
That's not okay.
That's not okay. We become so desensitized because we're so far away.
Yeah, and you said it early on that we become so polarized.
Yeah.
Like we get on social media, we listen to our left wing or right wing commentator, we listen to that internet pastor that we listen to, and they've chosen a side and they want you to get all riled up. And I think people need to like unplug for a little while, maybe crack open a history book instead of listening to
or the Bible
or the Bible and
both
figure out what's going on in that region of the world, because there's this idea, especially in a lot of Americans' minds, that if you're a Palestinian and you live in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip, that you're automatically a terrorist, and that's just not the way it is. I mean, between my tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, we found was that the locals didn't want to talk to us and give us intel. They knew what was going on. They knew Al Qaeda was in there and they were setting up areas, in the cities there in Ramadi and Fallujah and Haditha, and the locals knew they were in there. I mean, to us, we look at them and like, oh, well, they're all dressed the same. Well, the locals know who's supposed to be there and who's not,
You know your community.
So yeah, exactly. So they didn't want to talk to us, because if one of those Al-Qaeda terrorists saw them talking to an American or even to one of our interpreters, like their whole family would be ripped out of the house and stoned to death. So, I mean, there was a long time where trying to get any local intelligence was like, it wasn't happening. So, I've seen people on Twitter and whatnot saying, how could the Palestinian people there in the Gaza Strip had to know that they were there? Well, yeah, they did. But they're just everyday people like us. They want to raise their families, they want to work, they want to, leave an inheritance for their kids, just like we do over here in Western culture. And the vast majority of Palestinians don't want anything to do with any of those terrorist group. Of course, there are people, Palestinians that live in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip that fully back what Hamas is doing. But I think that's a very, very tiny number, a fraction. I mean, it's just, like I was stationed in Ireland for a couple of years, and
met some Nephilim there.
But and this would have been, in the early 2000s, and the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, had been like disbanded for years. But you go into some of these pubs in Temple Bar, Dublin, at midnight on a Friday, they're singing IRA songs in the pubs, so I guess my point is that there's always a small fraction of any population that is willing to do extreme things, but the vast majority of the people, they just want to live their lives in peace and raise their families and leave an inheritance for their kids. But and I'm not saying that pastors in this country are saying the wrong things, or but from my point of view, it's almost like they're coaxing you almost to take a side.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Be aware of these things, be aware of the signs, be aware of the clock of Israel, or I kind of think of it as like the center point where things ring out from there and they reverberate to here, and all around the world, because that's the idea, was for it to spread.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what I think that is going on.
And it's anybody's guess. I mean, nobody on this planet knows why God promised that particular land to the Israelites. Nobody can tell us but God why they have, the Israeli people have been taken in, into slavery, removed from their country, and then, decades, hundreds of years later, allowed to come back and retake that land. There's example after example in the Old Testament of the Israelites going up against militaries that were 10 times their size and slaughtering everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, like, Jerusalem is burned to the ground. The Israelites are taken into slavery, removed from the country. So that tells me, at least in my head, that it's promised land, but it's contested land.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
But God has allowed that land to turn hands over, or I don't know if I should say God has allowed or man has allowed, because God would show up and do something that nobody could explain, and then the whole nation returned to God. And then a couple generations later, there they are worshiping idols again. So
that like in black and white all over.
Yeah.
But I want to land with this. This is something that because as we were talking about it before we started recording, I felt like the Lord brought up the New Jerusalem to me. So I was looking up scripture that had to do with New Jerusalem. I don't know, this just kind of popped up, and it's Revelation 21. I'm going to start with 22. And this is why I think it's so important that we don't focus so much. I know that that's hard to hear, but the land is important, but the land is not really what the enemy is after. It is the agenda of the Father. It is his plan. It is his promise. The land is something people get hung up on, I think. And here, just listen with that filter as I read this. Okay. Revelation 21:22 to begin. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon or shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. If we are the thing, we are the New Jerusalem body. We carry that thing. The land is important. We watch what's going on there because that's a focal point. But the people that carry the light of Christ, that is his church. That is what's going on. That is what the enemy is truly after. But if they can do guerrilla war tactics and have us worried about this land over here and not about the truth and who our identity is in Christ, then he's going to keep us in this vicious cycle of weirdness. So
yeah,
that's
a beautiful way to end this. So I think hopefully people are a little more comfortable with what's going on, and
read some history books.
Unplug from social media for a little bit, pick up a history book,
pray,
like figure out what's going on in that part of the world.
Ask the Lord to reveal it to you, because he'll reveal to you patterns and times and seasons and things.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll see y'all guys next time.
Thanks, James. Bye.
Thanks for joining us here at The Shift. If this podcast encouraged you or you have questions, please connect with us at theshiftpodcast.info. Make the shift.